few days ago I had a very strange dream. I was standing on a long, narrow road that led to my school. It was strangely quiet. There was no wind blowing, no birds singing, and no insects buzzing. The road was completely empty and there was no one around. I followed it. It was then that I had a strange feeling that someone was looking at me. Looking over my shoulder, I noticed a small human figure in the distance. The man seemed to be running at full speed. I walked forward, but every time I looked back the man was getting closer and closer to me. This whole situation started to make me very nervous. He just kept catching up with me, getting closer and closer. At some point I stopped and looked back. The man also stopped. He just stood in the middle of the road and stared at me. When I started walking again, the man ran after me. Eventually, he got close enough to me that I could see his face. It was a clown. One of those sad clowns that you can see in pictures. He was wearing a shabby hat and a worn-out coat, like a tramp. The way he looked at me really scared me, and for a moment I thought, if he catches me, he'll kill me. I wanted to run, but for some reason I couldn't do it. My legs became heavy, and I could barely lift them. All I could do was keep going as before. The clown was getting closer and closer. The next time I looked back, I could see his eyes. They cried. I saw my school in the distance and felt relieved. Something told me that if I could get there before the clown caught me, I would be saved. When I was at the main gate of the school, I looked back for the last time. The clown was right behind me. He grabbed my shoulder and turned me around. The scariest thing was his face. It wasn't evil at all. On the contrary, it was a desperate, doomed look. Tears streamed down his painted cheeks. "I got you," he said. Then to my surprise, he just let me go and started walking away. I was left standing in complete disbelief. How could I be so stupid? I was afraid for no reason. I started chuckling to myself. The clown stopped and looked back. He took a rusty knife out of his pocket and held it up to his face. "If I catch you a second time, I'll cut you," he said. "For the third time, I'll have to kill you. See you later." Having said that, the clown wiped the tears from his face and left. I woke up in a cold sweat. Ever since I had this dream, I'm too scared to go back to sleep. All day long I drink coffee and Coca-Cola, trying not to fall asleep. I'm afraid to close my eyes even for a moment. I'm afraid I might fall asleep, and if I have a dream, I know the clown will be waiting for me.